Cade Klubnik is becoming the player that we always knew that he could be.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Clemson podcast. I'm your host, John Bivens. You can follow us over on X at I am John Bivens. We are a credentialed media member for Clemson University with the baseball, basketball, and football team. Thanks so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at and over on YouTube. And we are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. After you listen to this podcast, make sure to check out one of the over 200 shows affiliated with the Locked On Podcast Network. It's just like the Locked On ACC show. Here on Locked On Clemson, though, you're getting all sports, all passion, all the time, where we're bringing you everything you need to know regarding Clemson sports. Today is Wednesday, August 14th. We're talking about Cade's improvement and how much he's improved so far. Talking about how this year we're chasing after the number one defense in the nation. Is that achievable? And how can a smart offense help us achieve that goal? It's going to be great. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I got great news for you. This offseason, Cade Klubnik has became the player that we knew that he could be. He's there. He's reached it. Look, Cade Klubnik was a high talented prospect. 5-star recruit. So many different schools wanted him, and Clemson's where he landed. And it really wasn't up in the air for a long time. We kind of knew where he was going to land pretty early on because he wanted to be at Clemson. And so he came there. He came in high talented. DJU started his freshman year, and a lot of people were like, when DJU suffered, put in Cade. Dabo waited until the AC championship game where Cade went off, led us to a victory, played against Tennessee, and did not play too hot in the bowl game there. And then last year was his first year as a full-time starter for Clemson University. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. There was a lot of areas that he struggled. There was areas like decision-making where that was very questionable at times. Areas like consistency, where he'd play really well, have a great pass. We've talked about this in the past, especially that Miami game. He'd make a great pass, and then the next play would try to be hero ball and play terrible. Consistency was questionable. His footwork, pocket presence, those were like big issues where sometimes like it felt like he was like doing crisscross in the pocket with his feet. You never do that, right? It's very shuffle steps. You're keeping your feet where they're supposed to be, not crossing over. But those were questionable at times. His physical side, he was a little undersized for his position last year. That was a little bit questionable. And then perhaps the biggest one was his leadership. Last year, there was a lot of leadership questions from Cade of taking charge of this team and taking charge of the group. But I'm here to let you know, everything we're hearing when it comes to this offseason is that Cade has grew at every level. Cade Klubnik is the player now that we are expecting him to be, the one that we expected him to be last year. He's that player. I'm telling you right now, put it on. I guarantee it. He's that kind of player. He's made the jumps. He's made the leaps. He's made the improvements where he's supposed to. Am I saying he's going to be Heisman level? No. What I am saying is he's capable now to lead Clemson where Clemson knows we should be. John Blow from Post and Courier. He's a great guy. I've met him a couple of times down doing some credentialed media stuff down at Clemson. He put out an article that was really interesting, and it showed a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with Cade Klubnik. And I think it highlighted a lot of areas from where just who Clemson is. And so we're going to talk about a couple of quotes from other players, and all those quotes have came from that article. But the main thing I want to talk about real quickly is I think there's 5 areas this year that we have seen Cade drastically improve, and it proves how he is the player we expect him to be. Number 1, man, his leadership has grown leaps and bounds this offseason. If you're not aware, coaches can coach during the offseason, but a very specific amount. They can't lead practices the whole time. They can't communicate with their players the whole time. It's very strict on how much they can communicate and how many practices they can have, how many players they can get together at one time. It's very strict. But Cade Klubnik has determined he's going to be a leader. He's came out, he's took this assertive leadership role. Players like Phil Maffa talked about how he's found his voice and how he's becoming the more of that vocal leader. Last year he was vocal, but he wasn't much necessarily a leader. This year he's pairing those together, and he's seeing he's leading this a vocal leadership coming out. He's going through and he's reviewing film with different players. He's teaching his teammates. In order to be a college quarterback, especially at D1 level, especially at the level of Clemson, you've got to be able to know what every single person on the offensive side and most of the players on defensive side are supposed to do. Because you're the quarterback, you're the captain of the team. You got to know where every people's supposed to be, because if you know where he is, then you can know where he's going to be. You know what to expect. If he's not there, you go to him. That's what you got to do. You got to trust your offensive line is going to take off the A gap and not leave the B gap wide open, right? Like, you have to know those things. You have to know those specific things. Cade Klubnik has grown in that. This offseason, he had player-led meetings. We'll talk about more than that in a second, but he led player-made meetings where he was teaching people and teaching his receivers, teaching his offensive, the simple things and the importance of details like route running or route angles, receiver splits. He's going through teaching his teammates. His leadership has grown dramatically. And then also, number 2 area that he's grown is his physical and mental maturity. Man, he's still the same height, but he's putting on a little bit more weight. He's now coming in at like 210, so he's less of the undersized player. He kept his mobility. Everything we've seen is that his speed hasn't decreased at all. He's just grown some muscle with it. That's exciting. 1, it's more durable in the pocket. You're not going to be expecting as more injuries. But 2, let's use that athleticism when he runs. No, I'm not saying don't run every time. Cade Klubnik, please don't run every time. We don't need that. But when you do run, make a couple people miss. Make it hard for people to take you down. His presence in the huddles and meetings, it's became more commanding, and that's a quality noticed by his teammates. Number 3 is his player-led initiative. This goes back to those player team meetings. So Cade was talking with Garrett Riley and a student assistant, which was Paul Tyson, came in as a transfer to play at Clemson, and now he's a student assistant. He was talking to them, and they gave him the idea of like, hey, just because coaches can't meet with you very often, that doesn't mean that you can't meet with your teammates. And so now this whole offseason, he's led weekly or bi-weekly or twice a week meetings with different groups of his players and created this player-only meetings. And that spread, he led that. He started that. That didn't spread to other groups for me. So now there's multiple groups that have been forming throughout the whole season of people just growing closer. They're reviewing film. They're helping each other in different role aspects. They're growing together athletically. They're also opening up like on a team bonding area. You have players like offensive linemen coming through and sharing their why, talking about why they want to do what they want to do. What's their motivation? What's the motivation behind what they do? What's the motivation on why they play? What is their why, which is so important. If you don't know your why, you don't know your how. Cade Klubnik is leading all of that. So the culture at Clemson is becoming even more of true Clemson culture after last year's question marks. And it started with Cade Klubnik. That's maturity. That's leadership. The 4th part is mentorship and coaching. Look, Cade Klubnik is blessed with one of the best coaches of all time in college football, Dabo Swinney, but he's not ending there. He's gone through so many different clinics, so many different training sessions. He went to the Manning School to learn some stuff. He's got a longtime mentor of Nick Foles. He went to the same area in high school in Texas. He talks with him a lot, especially about this year. We'll talk about this more before the season, but this year quarterbacks can have their coaches in ear for the first time ever on the college football D1 level. They can have that now. So he was looking at Nick Foles being like, hey, help me adjust with this. Help me kind of change with this. He also, former NFL quarterback Jordan Palmer, has connected with him and grown with him. Exciting stuff. He's looking for that mentorship and coaching. But he's also, he's growing with the coaches and assistant coaches at Clemson. I don't know if y'all know this, but college football has announced this year that there isn't a limit on how many coaches teams can have on the sideline. Now he's got people like Taj Boyd and John Grass who can give him immediate feedback following the plays. John Blue wrote about this article, great stuff that he put out. He wrote that when Cade's not running the plays, like if CV or Trent Pierman are running the plays on offense, Cade's walking through his progressions with Taj Boyd on the sideline. After a play happens, Cade immediately sprints off, goes to Taj, and be like, what'd you think about the read? What could I have done better? How's the footwork? He's seeking out immediate results to be able to improve those. Cade has grown leaps and bounds, and all 4 of those have grown to the 5th one, which I think might be second most important outside of leadership, and that's his confidence. Cade's confidence is palpable. It channels through the entire offense, and it makes them this smarter, more experienced unit. He's really showing that on the level. He's showing his confidence from where he is to leading that to his teammates, which grow the teammates' confidence as a whole. Cade Klubnik is developing into the quarterback that we knew he could be, and this year we're gonna see the quarterback that we know Cade Klubnik can be. Get ready, get excited. It's going to be electric. I know we've talked a lot about the offense. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the defense. The defense set themselves up for a hefty goal this year of assigning themselves the goal of being the number 1 defense in the nation. And I believe that they can do it. MLB is in full swing. Very little is better than a game day at Clemson University, but MLB games are right up there with them. I love going to different ballparks. I love feeling the vibe and the energy of the stadium. My go-to place for tickets, though, is the Gametime ticket app. Gametime is an authorized ticket seller for all MLB games, and they're the easiest place to go to for all your ticket needs. Whether it's in advance or the day of, prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tickets or the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Braves are fighting for a playoff spot. My Padres are fighting for the division. It's exciting part. One of the most exciting parts of baseball season is right now. You can catch all the action with Gametime. I love you get 60% off when you're buying last-minute tickets. I love that before you buy any seat, you get a panoramic view so you can see exactly what you know what to expect. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app now today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McCaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussions of the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. He talks about the conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL, expanded playoffs, and so much more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Clemson can have the number 1 defense in the nation this year. Look, our offense the past couple of years has been something to question. It's had its ups, it's had its downs, sometimes more downs than ups. There's no question about that. This year, though, even with all the offense, the defense has been steady year in and year out. I just want to go through. And for the past 10 years, I asked an AI, I was like, hey, generate me the top 5 defenses every year for the past 10 years. And it goes through, and you know as well as I do, you have ESPN rankings, you have college football rankings, you have AP rankings, you have this sport, you have that source, you have that news site, you have that article, you have that Redditor. So many people put out their best defenses. So if I could say they're number 1 every year, and I bet there's an article out there that'll say that Clemson's number 1 every year. So I had this AI site kind of average all of those together, and I had it produce the top 5 every year for the past 10 years. Here's where Clemson landed on these averages. 2014, 5. 2015, 2. 2016, 3. 2017, 3. 2018, 1. 2019, 3. 2020, 4. 2021, they were top 10, but not top 5. 22, 3. And 23, we finished 8th. For the past 10 years, we have finished top 5 on average in 8 of them. And the 2 that we weren't top 5, we were top 10. Our defense is elite. There's an argument that for the past 10 years, our defense is the best one in the nation. The only other ones that are comparable are Georgia and Clemson, or Georgia and Alabama. Here's Georgia's the past couple of years. You had Georgia, they weren't appeared in 2014, 15, 16. But in 17, they were 4, 18, 4, 19, 2, 23, 21, 1, 22, 1, 23, number 2. They're comparable. They're up there. Alabama's the only other one that appears on a lot, and they haven't appeared since 2020. They finished 1-1-1-1, 18-2, 19 they didn't appear, 2020 they appeared second, and they haven't been on the list any since except for 2022 when they were top 5. Those two are the only ones comparable. Clemson is the only one that was on this list every single year except for once. This team is electric. This team is something that could be really, really, really special. And this defense is one that could be the number one defense in the nation. It's possible. It's out there. And here's the reasons why. I'm going to give you a couple key reasons why this year's team can be the number one defense in the nation. Number one, we've got some great leaders returning to take hold. We've got some great returning defensive leaders that are coming with leadership, that are coming with experience, that can take charge of this team. Number one, for sure, our captain, Barrett Carter. Our linebackers, our defensive linebackers, by far, in my opinion, the best linebacker group out there. You've got Barrett Carter, who is an All-American, the preseason All-American. You've got Sammy Brown, who is one of the highest recruits, 5-star recruits, starting going to be freshman. He's going to play a lot. You've got Wade Woodaz, who just every year continues to get better and better and better. You've got Kobe McLeod, who's great last year in his redshirt freshman season. You have so many returning players, but you also have TJ Parker. You also have Peter Woods, 2 returning sophomores. You've got key returning players that are going to be absolutely electric this year. Not only that, but there's other reasons as well. You've also got the coaching staff. Dabo Swinney has proven he's a good coach. I won't talk a lot about him, but Wes Goodwin has provided that he has the craftiness and the elite ability to make sure this defensive unit does what he does what it needs to do. When his first year came, he was a little iffy, but he's still one of the best in the nation. He's being able to provide this influence that's pairs perfectly with Dabo Swinney to keep this defense alive. Number 4 is not only do we have the returning players, we have some sophomore and freshmen that are ready to make an impact for the first time this year. You have people like, we talked about it last episode, Ricardo Jones, freshman, going to make a huge difference. Khalil Barnes was a freshman last year, played well. He's coming in as a sophomore. New leadership there. You have Sammy Brown, like we talked about, that new player coming in that's going to be elite. I'm confident he's going to make an all-freshman team. You've got Corian Gibson, who's a freshman cornerback. He's so fast. I mean, he is quick. He's going to make an impact. So not only – you also have Wade Woodaz's little brother, Drew, which – could be amazing. He also could be another Clay Sweeney, but we won't talk about that. You've got the returning players, but you also have new players coming in to make a difference. It doesn't end there, though. Our defensive schemes blow my mind away. There's so many times last year where we would put out a scheme. We'd put out a 3-3-5 or we'd put out a 3-4, and I'm like, why are we running this right now? And it would be exactly what we needed to do. There's so many times that we switch up the schemes, and it's like that's exactly what we were supposed to do. They make the right rotations. They make the right substitutions. They make the right schemes. They put the right players where they need to be, and it shows that then success. This coaching leads to excellent schemes, which allow it to be successful. There's also, yes, there's competition out there. I'm not saying that. Yes, there's competition out there. Like we talked about, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, their defense is coming alive past couple years. They've got strong defenses, but Clemson can be the number one. And perhaps one of the biggest things this year of why they can be number one is I know we've got a tough schedule, but Clemson has the opportunity this year to prove their defensive dominance. What happens if they come out again week 1 and again don't let Georgia score an offensive touchdown? Everyone's like, oh, that's not going to happen. People said the same thing in 2021. Before that game in 2021, if I'd have told you, hey, Georgia's not going to score an offensive touchdown, you'd have been like, shut up. You're crazy. No, this team can do that. They have the potential to prove that they have what it takes in order to make this team the number one defense in the nation. I said at the end of that last segment, I kind of felt like Avatar. You know, in Avatar, it ends in that opening segment, and I believe he can change the world. That's how I felt. I believe they can do it. A little showing their nerdy side right there. But honestly, with Clemson's coaching, with their scheming, with their returning players, with their leadership, with their new players, Clemson will have the number one defense in the nation this year. But you can't have a really good defense without a really smart offense. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, before we dive into this last part, we do want to let you know this. If you are looking to grow closer and grow deeper into Clemson, Locked On Clemson podcast, make sure you join our Locked On Clemson Insider program. What that is it allows you up close and personal with me and with the show. By subscribing to that, you can have one-on-one conversations with us where you can text me anytime you want. You can send a message. We can have conversations that way. You can send in questions and comments that'll make appearances on the show, but you also open up to exclusive episodes such as film study when the season starts. Episodes such as Mailbag, where we just take all kinds of questions we get on Twitter and through that insider program, and we just make a video answering your questions. All of that is only available to all of our Locked On Insider subscribers. So if you aren't, make sure you're subscribed to that. You can do that by texting Clemson to 864-252-1907. You get 14 days for free to try it out, and then you can decide if you want to keep going or cancel it. But join that. It's a great time. You want to be a part of that insider program. But back to the show. In order for our offense, or in order for our defense to be number one, our offense has to play extremely smart. If we want the number one defense in the nation, we've got to have a smart offense. And I know some people, if you're not too big into football, you're like, why are you talking about offense when it comes to defense? Here's why. Last year, our defense ranked number 8. Our defense had the talent, the potential, and the ability to be so much higher than that. But because of dumb mistakes by our offense, it forced them to be on the field so much more and have to have so much more time on the field that they didn't have the chance to be the defense that they truly are. Our defense came in number 8 when they had to rescue us from so many games last year. This year, the offense has to be extremely smart in order for us to have the number one defense in the nation. And when I say smart, here's a couple areas that I'm talking about. Number one is this. They have got to have better ball control and time of possession. Last year, we had some ugly turnovers. I mean, you think you don't have to go farther than week 1 to see that. 2 fumbles in the red zone that we lost. You can't have that. You can't have Cade Klubnik fumbling the ball 10 times, losing 5 of them, and 9 interceptions on the year. You can't have that because the more our offense doesn't have the ball, common sense tells you that's more that our defense has to be on the field. I mean, that's just, if our offense is on the field, our defense is. And if our defense is on the field, that's more they have to stop. That's more opportunities that they have to stop. More they're getting tired. More time they have to show up. In order for our defense to be number 1 in the nation, they've got to get rest. They've got to have, our offense has to have long possessions. We can't have 3 and outs. We can't have consistently 3 and outs. Now, 3-play scoring drives, you'll never hear me complain about that. Do that all day long. That'll hype up our defense on a different level. But if we're going 3 and out, if we're getting a first down punt, 3 and out, first down punt over and over and over again, our defense can be on the field way too much. That isn't fair to them. That doesn't allow them to play at the level that they can play at. So in order for our defense to be number 1 in the nation, our offense has to have time, be smarter with time of possession and ball control. That starts with Cade Klubnik and Phil Maffa. Number 2, we kind of already talked about this. You've got to limit turnovers. How do you make longer possessions? Well, don't turn the ball over. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? If you want to have longer possessions, don't end your possessions by you making mistakes. I mean, very common sense, I know. But in order for our defense to shine, Garrett Riley and his offensive system has to make sure that turnovers aren't happening. And I will say, Garrett Riley in the dirt raid, he's done everything he can to design this system to minimize the risky plays, but still create explosive opportunities. I'm going to say that again. This system is designed for limiting risky and encouraging explosive. It's done that through pounding the rock, running it, short, consistent passes. You open up the field by having small, short impact plays, running game success, short pass success. You have that over and over again, and we have the speed with Wesco, TJ Moore, Tyler Brown, Cole Turner. We have the speed that then it'll begin opening the deep plays down the field. And if they guard our outside, you got Jake Brenningstool in the middle that can catch anything thrown at him. In order for our defense to be number 1, offense got to limit possessions. They've got to limit turnovers. They've got to have scoring efficiency in the red zone. Our days of not getting points in the red zone have to be over. No more empty red zone trips. No more missed field goals. No more turnovers in the red zone. No more fumbles. No more interceptions. No more empty plays. No more 4th and inches and we lose yards, get tackled behind the line of scrimmage, and don't pick up a 4th down. We've got to make sure we're efficient in the red zone in order for that to happen. That has to be there. And the last thing about a smart offense, and this is kind of offense, kind of a different part, is our special teams. Special teams is a part of the game that I feel like gets overlooked a lot when it's good, but when it's bad, it gets attacked. Here's what I mean. Probably no one except for extreme Clemson fans could name our kicker, our last successful kicker. Probably not a lot of people can. I can. BT Potter. An excellent player, right? He was excellent. He was a great kicker. He was consistent. He played for 5 years at Clemson. He was one of the most prolific kickers in Clemson and ACC shooting NCAA history. I mean, he finished like 73 of 97 in field goals. He was electric. Nobody gave him the credit he deserved when he was at Clemson. Then he left, and since then we've had this carousel of kickers that we've struggled really heavily with, right? And because of that, now it's getting attention. We're missing field goals. We're missing field goal after field goal after field goal, right? Over and over and over again, we're missing these. Our kickers have to make it. Right now, there's a competition on the kicking lineup. There's not really a set who's going to be the starter right now. Our kickers are between Robert Gunn III, who's a sophomore, and Nolan Hauser, who's a freshman. Dabo Sweeney says every day it's up. Whoever led the day before gets kicker number 1 the next day, and if they get outperformed, they switch it back. It seems right now, the beginning of this offseason, summer camp, early on in the fall, Robert Gunn had it. But recently, it's felt like Nolan Hauser is taking over that role of kicker number 1, and I'm okay with that. I love Robert Gunn off the field. On the field, he hasn't proved it yet. Only thing he's proved is he can smash the ball on kickoffs. When it comes to field goals, Hauser definitely has what seems right now the upside. No matter who's in that role, in order for our defense to be number 1 in the nation, we've got to make our field goals. Our defense set the goal for themselves to be number 1 in the nation. And on the defensive side, easily possible. They have the talent. They have the returning players. They have all that there. They check every box. What has to happen in order for that to occur, though, our offense has to play smart. Our offense has to have a smart year in order for our defense to be number 1 in the nation. And with that being said, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Locked On Clemson podcast. Hey, thanks so much for making Clemson your first listen every single day. Now go check out Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer's got some great stuff for you over on there. You can find the link to that in the episode notes. You don't have to search for it. Just click that link and it'll take you right to it. But thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We want to hear all of your thoughts and feedback on today's topic. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your opinions. Let us know your feedback. Let us know your thoughts on everything we talked about. Hit us up on Twitter. Send us a text through our Insider program. Any of the ways, we would love to hear from you. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, wherever you get your podcast at. Or if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We are on the journey to 1,000. And as of right now, we are 13 subscribers away. 13. That's all we need. Hit that subscribe button. Share it with some friends. Help us get to that milestone of 1,000. But hit that subscribe button. That way, every day we can be your first listen here on Locked On Clemson. Make sure to check out other podcasts from Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. We can't wait to see you tomorrow on the next episode of the Locked On Clemson podcast. But until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, go Tigers.